Fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Mr. Michael Hawley's all over the place. He's in Buffalo, and it's a Monday.
That is correct. Buffalo Monday, and it's a perfect for this discussion we're going to have today.
Mr. OJ, that's you.
Oh, you betcha. Well, go Bills.
Yeah, you.
That's right. I do have a pair of Bruno Malis in my closet, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, if the glove fits, you must acquit. So, here we're gonna talk about OJ, and we know he's passed, and but there's a book out, and it's called OJ's Moon, and it's the untold true stories from the other side. And I don't think it means like the other side, as in
paranormal.
Yeah, he's not calling us, okay? He's not calling in today. Instead, we've got writer B.T. Wedemeyer. So thank you for being here, Brian.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Nice speaking with you.
At this point in life, what drew you, Brian, into sitting down and actually writing a book on OJ and about the crime and, with Nicole Kidman and Ronald Goldman and stuff? What got you into this whole situation?
Well, I used to be a reporter and an editor at newspapers in Central California, here in Arizona, for about 20 years. I was a photojournalist in the Air Force. That was my job in the Air Force. And I got out of it because I wanted to get into education, and so I kind of had ruled out doing any more writing or anything along those lines. But it just so happens one day I was watching a documentary about the O.J. Simpson case, and a question popped in my head, and the question was something along the lines of, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the case, but I was asking the question of how did Ron get to Nicole's condo that night? Because in my mind, I'm thinking if he drove, wouldn't his car be parked out front or around the corner in the driveway or whatnot? And in my memory bank, I didn't watch the case with too much fervor, but in my memory bank, I couldn't remember any references to his method of transportation. So I got on my phone, I started Googling, I couldn't find anything, and that really bugged me. And then I went to work, and I started, looking more online at work, and I still couldn't find anything. And I could slowly, I think the journalist in me started coming out, I guess, a little bit. And then I was like, well, I'm going to start reading court transcripts. I found a website that has literally every official document related to the O.J. case, criminal and civil trial, and I started reading through these court transcripts, and then I had no idea this was going to happen, but I started stumbling upon these other stories that had nothing to do with my original question, and it really led me down this path where I just, in my mind, I had no choice. I called my wife and I said, hey, I'm going to commit to this book. I think I'm going to write a book, and here we are.
Right. And that's when your wife left you, or?
Yeah, no, she hasn't yet. Yeah, not yet. Call me next week.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like, well, there you go. That's how it goes.
You sound like an author. All right. That's great.
Yeah. I've been around,
I know.
Well, so when we get into this, so you're sitting there and you get caught up and you're following this through and you're writing and you're getting into it and all that stuff. Did you have any idea what you were trying to present at the time? Did you have an angle, so to speak, or did you have kind of a direction you wanted to go in?
Well, I really didn't, and the way I kind of decided to do it was to kind of rather than try to portray myself as this big OJ expert, I took the approach of kind of writing it like a memoir. So you're kind of with me as I'm making these discoveries and making these phone calls and getting emails from different people and whatnot. So that's kind of the approach that I took. It started off with Michael Nig, who was a victim of a murder. He actually knew Ron Goldman. He helped Ron get the job at the Mezzaluna, and for 30 years, his case, which is still unsolved, it has been linked to the OJ case by conspiracy theorists. I mean, for the longest time. So I wasn't even aware of that a Michael Nig existed, and so I just became really interested in that case, and I was able to track down Scott Masterson, who's he's retired now, but he was LAPD cold case detective. He was assigned to the Michael Nig case, and I was able to get him on the phone, and then I was able to obtain the entire investigative report on Michael Nig. So it really started off with Michael Nig and trying to basically just raise awareness of this other murder victim who's been kind of forgotten unless you're a conspiracy theorist.
Right. What's the basic overview of his case? Like, what is it? Do you kind of have an idea of who he was and kind of what had happened to him?
Yeah, he had just left Mezzaluna as a waiter about a month before the Bundy murders, and he got a job at a club called the Sanctuary. That's the same place where Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson hooked up for the first time. But he was working there, and he was on a date with his girlfriend. They were going to the El Coyote restaurant, which is a pretty famous Mexican restaurant in Hollywood. A lot of the big stars go there. They were on their way there. They parked across the street. They couldn't find parking at the restaurant, so they went across the street. There's a little tiny parking lot behind an art store across the street. They pulled in, and two black males approached. They wanted money. He refused. He had just started to get out of the car. There was a scuffle, and then there was a gunshot, and the two men ran off, got into a car with another person, and they took off down the street. LAPD did make some arrests a couple months later. They were pretty confident that they had their suspects, but the district attorney said there was not enough evidence. LAPD even appealed that decision by the district attorney several times, and with no luck. So that's kind of where the case was left.
Oh, so it's unsolved.
It's still unsolved to this day. I have been told that since the book came out, it has been reopened, because one of the witnesses that I interviewed, I found one of the witnesses, and she called back to the LAPD, and I heard it's been reopened since then. So maybe something good will come out of that. Yeah.
El Coyote, that's where Sharon Tate had her last supper.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Michael Nig I think he was a year old when that happened.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah. Yeah.
Time flies, when you're having fun. Well, that's interesting, and do you have a kind of something you hope, when someone picks up your book here and takes it home, reads it, does all that stuff, is there something you want them to get out of that book?
Well, yeah, I guess my ultimate goal is to, someday somebody picks up the book, something triggers in their memory, they recognize a name, the names of the suspects that were arrested, they're in there. I'm just hoping someday something might trigger, and that'll lead eventually to justice for Michael Nig and his family. But it's been difficult because of the conspiracy theories and trying to connect it with the OJ case and the allegations of drug dealing and things like that. Michael Nig was pulled into that stuff as well. So the family has really remained private. It was very difficult for me to track down and get any of his family members or loved ones. I did get a few, but they're really reluctant to come forward and offer anything along those lines.
So you're working the fence right now with Al and I were talking about causation versus correlation, where there might be a correlation, but it may not be the cause. But that's kind of like the central kind of the thing about conspiracies, where you want people to work on it, but then you don't want to go crazy with a conspiracy, but maybe there's a connection there. So it's like right in the middle there. This is a kind of like a perfect case for that battle.
Yeah, and to be honest, that is what pulled me in. I mean, but I wasn't. Being a reporter, it's up to me to get the facts. So I was really, just trying to stay calm and get as much facts as I could. And it didn't take very long for me to conclude that there is no connection between the two cases. But and I'm not on social media regurgitating what I was thinking over and over again either.
Oh, come on, get on that.
Right.
You want to get called some names? Let's go.
Yeah, for sure.
So
controversy sells.
It does. I do it all the time.
Right.
I'm always getting called names. No, now. So listen, your other big story here, like you were talking about, I guess Tom Lang. Like, what's your take on him, and what's kind of how you got to offer about that man?
Okay, so that one of the big thing that I have to get around a lot is getting people to understand there were two Tom Langs. There was Tom Lang, the detective, and he has an E on the end of his name. And then there was Tom Lang, the neighbor, who doesn't have an E on his name, and that's the Tom Lang that I'm referring to. He lived at literally exactly a block down the street from Nicole. He lived at 975. She lived at 875. He was a very successful general contractor. He had an office at the Champagne Towers. He was on a weekend getaway with his wife. They were in Tehachapi, which is where he lives to this day. They were actually out house hunting. They actually got the house where they were looking that weekend. They got home late Sunday night after picking up their daughter in Anaheim. They started unpacking. Tom says to his wife, "I'm going to walk the dog." They had a beautiful Rhodesian Ridgeback. He always walks it around the block. He always walks north up towards where Nicole's condo is. He always crosses the street at Dorothy because the only sidewalk on Dorothy is on the north side of the street. And so he always crosses that street. And then he walks around the block. He goes west on Dorothy to Gretna Green, then south, and then goes back into his house through his back alley where he parks his car. And he's very adamant that he left his house at exactly 10 p.m. He remembers the clock striking 10 as he left the house. It's a 3-minute walk up to the corner. And usually as he's walking north, when he gets closer to Dorothy, he sees if he sees headlights coming down Bundy, coming south, he tells his dog to stay. And when he walks his dog at night, he had a tendency to not use a leash, which was a big no-no in this area. But his dog was really very well trained, so he would go ahead and walk the dog without a leash. So what he would do is if he saw the lights coming down, he would tell the dog to stay, and then he would look up the street and see if there were turn signals. He didn't want the dog to cross Dorothy as the car was turning west on Dorothy. He didn't want his dog to get hit. So he did that. He saw some headlights coming in that direction, and when he couldn't see the headlights of the cars because he stepped out in the street a little bit and he looked up, and he says that he sees the front end of what he very clearly describes as a white Ford truck type vehicle, and he's not willing to commit to it being a Bronco or a pickup or anything like that, but he distinctly remembers seeing the blue Ford insignia on the grill, and he knows it was white. And then he crosses the street, and then when he sees after that, it starts to get interesting.
So what is your take on him in the sense of why is he in the book? What is it about his story that intrigues you enough to put him in the book?
Well, I think because of what he sees next, I think that if he was given the opportunity to take the stand, I think it could have had a big impact on the verdict. The way I found out about him is I was reading several OJ books, and I read F. Lee Bailey's book that he published right before he passed. And in the book, he talks about Tom Lang, and I was not familiar with this person. And he describes him as the most compelling witness of the case because he may have caught a glimpse of the killer or killers that night. That's Bailey's exact words. And so I was kind of interested in that. And I contacted Pat McKenna, who's a big private investigator. He was working for Shapiro and the Dream Team and those guys. And he interviewed Tom Lang, and Pat McKenna was really big about putting Tom Lang on the stand for the defense. And in F. Lee Bailey's book, he kind of portrays Tom Lang as a witness for the defense, but I really decided I needed to see if he was still around, and I was able to track him down and living a nice, quiet, peaceful life in Tehachapi, wondering why nobody ever called him.
A lot of that happens in a lot of cases, not just this one. But
yeah,
and Bailey didn't think Simpson did it.
Right, and Tom Lang does. That's what makes it really interesting. And he said, F. Lee Bailey in his book says that the only time he ever got into an argument with Johnny Cochran was whether or not to put Tom Lang on the stand. And obviously Johnny Cochran wins the argument. What's really interesting is that Tom Lang puts his witness statement down in writing and delivers it to Marcia Clark's office 36 hours after the murders, has it delivered by courier, and nobody from Marcia Clark's office ever contacted him. He did get a visit from a police officer, but it never went any further than that. And then after a couple of months, Pat McKenna ends up knocking on his door, and that was pretty much the extent of it. Oh, excuse me, I correct myself. He did get called into the courtroom, which is pretty interesting. In fact, on the same day that the other Tom Lang was testifying, he was in the courtroom, and Cochran ended up sending him home before he was able to testify.
And so Pat McKenna, how was he for you?
He was. I enjoyed talking to him. He talks point blank to you for sure. A lot of F-bombs.
Interesting man.
Yeah, for sure. But when Tom Lang crossed, what made it really interesting to me at the time was what he describes is when he crosses the street, his dog liked to run over to, as soon as they get across the street, his dog liked to run over to the big palm tree, which is the same palm tree. If you look at some of that footage from the crime scene, the yellow tape wrapped around the big palm tree, that's the same palm tree that his dog used to like to go, take a leak at. But as the dog got closer to the tree, he noticed what he describes as a blonde woman in dark clothing standing on the inside of the passenger door talking to somebody inside the vehicle. And because of where the tree was and where he was standing, he did not get a good look at who was inside the vehicle, if there was one person, more than one person, whatnot. He calls the dog to come because he doesn't want the dog to pee by her feet. So he calls the dog to come with him. They start walking west on Dorothy. But he takes one last look up the sidewalk up Bundy, and he describes what he sees as a young man, white or Hispanic, standing there in the middle of the sidewalk with his fist clenched. He says the man kind of looked angry. He thought maybe it was because the dog was without a leash, and maybe that's why the guy was upset. And that was pretty much the extent of it. And then he ends up walking home, and he doesn't think much about it until the news starts to spread about what happened up the street.
Right. And did you ever get a reason why they didn't want him on the stand, or he wasn't used, or was there anything, did anybody ever tell you why they didn't?
I wasn't able to track down anybody from Marcia Clark's office. I tried Carl Douglas. I wasn't able to reach him. I suspect that one of the reasons is it really has, it's a really tough sell for Marcia Clark to put a young man at that scene at 10:03, because if you follow the narrative, Ron Goldman, if it's Ron Goldman, he walks home, presumably showers, gets ready, eats something, whatever, and then has to drive over to the condo. He only has about 8 minutes to make that happen, and it's just not enough time. It takes 5 minutes to walk from the Mezzaluna to his apartment. So there was, in my mind at the time, there was really just no way that that person could have been Ron Goldman. So I think that might have had something to do with it, but I'm just, I'm guessing, I guess.
So at the end of the day now, had this changed anything in your mind as far as the case or OJ or anything? Has it, from before you wrote the book till now? Are you in a different place now?
I am. When I first got into this heavy, I was really under the impression that there had to have been, that other person had to be somebody else besides Ron and or besides OJ. And so in my mind, I'm thinking it had to be somebody else with OJ that night. So that's kind of where my head was at the time. But then I came up with, I guess, a hypothesis on how it could have been Ron. And the hypothesis is, and which I share in the book, is I think he might have went over there twice that night. I think that he gets that call from Nicole, and he tells her, I'll be over there at 10. Maybe she's outside kind of waiting for him to show up. I think if you look at the map, and you guys are probably familiar, but the Mezzaluna is kind of in between the apartment and the condo. And so if he were to walk over to the condo, then he would have had to double back and walk all the way back to his apartment. So I guess in my mind, what I'm thinking is he decided to walk home, and instead of going upstairs and instead of changing, he hops in the car real quick and then drives over to the condo. At that time is when it would have put him there right at about 10:03, a 5-minute walk, 3-minute drive, 9:55 plus 8, that's 10:03. At that time when he pulls up, maybe he gets out of the car, he's got the envelope with the glasses, he sees Nicole talking to somebody outside in the white vehicle, and then maybe Nicole motions to him, hey, this isn't a good time. Maybe he realizes they're fighting and whatnot, and says, I'll come back in a little bit. I think maybe that is what triggers the first murder at 10:15, which is when the witness hears the dog wailing, and then he goes home, takes a shower, does his thing, and comes back at about 10:40, which is when Robert Heidstra, the other dog walker, hears a young man say, hey, 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 here's the gate slam, here's another deeper voice talking. I think, in my theory, at least in the book, is that I think Nicole was murdered at 10:15. I think Ron Goldman was murdered at around 10:40.
So how has this changed you, writing this book?
Well, I really have rediscovered my passion for writing and journalism. I really love my kids here at school, but I really enjoyed writing the book, the process of writing the book, and I self-published, obviously. I didn't know what I was doing. It was all new to me. So, but I really enjoyed it. It's doing pretty good on Amazon with the reviews. So I appreciate you guys putting me on and giving me a chance to say a few words for sure.
So what do you got going next then? Are you going to do some other case or work further on this one? Where you go now?
Yeah, I'm working on something. So I was, again, watching something on TV about the happy face killer. And I started reading about the happy face killer, and I learned that one of the victims, he dumped the body just across the river from where I live. I'm right on the border I'm right on the Colorado River. I'm north of Blythe on the Arizona side of the river. I'm in Parker, Arizona. But on the California side, the Jesperson, the happy-faced killer, that's where he kills her at the truck stop and then places the body in some bushes on the side of the road on the other side of the river. It's probably a 20-minute drive. So I was kind of interested in that. And then I found out later on that right now it's the only unidentified victim that's left. And so I'm kind of digging into that. They were just last year, they were able to make a DNA match on just the father's side, but not the mother. So, and what's interesting, the father has passed away, and his family members, they don't know who the mother is. I talked to the half sister, and she told me his dad back in the day when he was young liked to run around a lot, and so they suspect it probably had something to do with that. So I'm trying to find, at least raise awareness of this other victim who Jesperson called Claudia, and that's the name that he gave her, that he says that she said what her name, that was her name, so I'm going with that. But pretty interesting.
Interesting like crazy. So listen, how do people find you, reach out, give you information? Do you have social media? Do you have a website? Do you have a lemonade stand? Where do people find?
Well, they can come down to the VFW Post 7061 in Parker. I'll buy them a beer and we can talk about the case. They can do that. I'm actually the commander of my post here in town. So, but nice. I do have a Facebook page. It's just the same name, OJ's Moon. They can go on there. I try to post things all the time on there. I'm on Amazon. You can search Amazon on there. And there's an audio book now. I did it myself, so don't laugh too much, but I tried.
That's what it's about,
Yep.
Well, fantastic. Now, okay, so now we're going to have that up on our website along with your book and information, and we're glad you came on and talking about your book, The OJ's Moon. It's the untold true stories from the other side, and it's B.T. Wedemeyer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
It was awesome.
And good luck the rest of the way with whatever you do.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.